And we are back, episode number 56. This is the Daru Strong Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Daru. Today I have my man, Triathlon Taren. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, check him out, Triathlon Taren. Also, he has an online programming platform that is subjective for those individuals that are looking for some triathlon advice and also programming, so check him out. But before we get into the interview, I have to shout out the sponsors. My one and only sponsor today is vivobarefoot.com. My guys over at Vivo Barefoot have been lacing up my entire gym, my athletes and my coaches, with some Vivos. We all are rocking them. So if you want to rock them yourself, go ahead, use my discount code Daru Strong at your checkout. You get 10% off your final purchase. Also, if you are looking to learn some of the methods, the protocols, the systems of my own training and the athletes that I use this on, you can go ahead and check out my mentorship program. It is a one-time fee and you'll get access for life. We will also be going over every other weekend. We get on a call, we talk about your questions, we go over them, and we get you ready to get certified in a Daru Strong certification. So if you're looking for that, go ahead, check it out. Go to darustrong.com. Also, you can find all of my programs there. My Body Armor, Body Weight Only program. It's an 8-week program that you can use to get in shape, even if you don't have access to a gym or you are on lockdown. Yes, I know how this is. This time is crazy, but we are working our way out of it. But in the meantime, I'm going to make sure you stay on point. Body Armor, go check it out. Now, let's get on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast. Daru Strong Podcast.
Let's go. Mind over matter. Put your mind somewhere else and keep going. That little voice in your head is trying to stop you from getting to where you want to be. Be successful and keep moving forward.
With your host and world-renowned strength and conditioning coach, Phil Daru.
You're big into kettlebells too, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, we use a lot. I'm big with combat sports. You know, I've been a fighter for 8 or 9 years, and I work with a lot of UFC fighters. So we use kettlebells a lot, just from the ability to like contract and relax. That's how you throw a punch. That's how you strike. So using the kettlebells definitely helps with that, you know.
I've become such a huge fan. I got into it at like the end of summer last year, and it is like the best bang for your buck exercise as far as weight bearing exercise that you can possibly have, man. Like it's so good.
I seen you start doing it. I was gonna ask you about that too, just like what your training's looking like right now, but. I've been following you since, man, I've been getting into triathlon training, obviously. You've seen some pictures that I posted, put some stories up. But as soon as I type in triathlon training, you pop up. So I watched like, I don't know, maybe, and I'm not trying to boost you up, but I watched about maybe 50 videos so far. So we're well on our way. Feel like I know you already. But before we go on, I do want to go ahead and let some of the listeners know, again, I have coaches, I have fighters, and a lot of my fighters love triathlon training, believe it or not. A lot of my UFC fighters are actually wanting to train with me to get ready for my next event.
Diaz guys, they do it, right?
Yeah, the Diaz brothers, you know, there's a lot of guys, man. Even Dustin Poirier, the guy that I work with now, he's going to fight Conor McGregor again. He loves it too. I mean, he runs, he swims, he bikes. You know, there's a guy named Jared Gordon, another UFC fighter, top 10, I think maybe top 15 contender. He's definitely into it. He's actually going to do a triathlon pretty soon, and he's not even going to wait until he's done with his career. So, I mean, it's big, believe it or not. And honestly, the correlation is there, you know, from just the training itself. Yeah, definitely, because you're building up that aerobic capacity mentally too as well. And that's another reason why I decided to get into it. But before I go on, I want you to go ahead and give us a quick background and bio of who you are and talk about, you know, how you transitioned into triathlon training and then building up your YouTube channel. You're very successful, obviously. But can you go ahead and give us a little background there?
Yeah, so I got into triathlon almost as an accident like 12 years ago. I was pretty overweight in my early 20s. Like I got up to 215 pounds, and not like a good 215 pounds, like 5'8", size 40 waist, 30 inseam. Like, it's hard to find those jeans. That's what I was like I'd be about 23 or so. So I just got fed up with it at one point and started lifting weights. And that's what I thought was the only way to actually get healthy. So I lifted weights and started learning a little bit about nutrition on bodybuilding.com. Eventually I got down to like 175 pounds, but it was like bodybuilding 175 pounds. So I was like bulky and I'd have to cut down to that. Couldn't maintain it and just got injured at one point trying to do a heavy bench. And I couldn't do anything, like could not move my arm. So I just started walking on the treadmill one day. That got super boring after a couple of weeks. Then started intermixing walk on the treadmill one day, go on the bike the next day. And after a couple of weeks of that, then I'm like, oh, this is boring. And there was a pool at the gym. So I'm like, well, I'll go and try to swim. And after a couple of weeks, I realized, hey, maybe I can do a triathlon. And that was how I got into it and just sucked me in. It was so much more engaging, more exciting, there's more variability, more difference in the workouts day to day than just working on my bench. And I've since gone a lot more back to actually having strength training in my endurance training program, but I liked it a lot more. It was way more exhilarating than walking into a gym, putting on some headphones and lifting for an hour. I could put on headphones, challenge myself, but then there was this big goal of a race. So yeah, I've been doing it for 12 years and I love it. Like it's almost like a religion. Like it gives me purpose and structure to my life and excitement and challenge and makes me feel more daring, like all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the main reasons why I started doing it too. Like I was like, all right, man, I've done powerlifting, I've done strongman, I was a professional athlete, I was a fighter, college football, all that. And I was like, man, I need to do something. I'm a coach. I've coached right now. I have my own gym, but I've coached over 200 fighters in the past 6 years. So it's been a lot of volume. Right now, it's like, all right, I need to challenge myself. I need to push myself. And that was something that I was looking at triathlon training. I was looking at like Ironmans and things of that nature, something that was going to test me mentally and physically. And from an endurance standpoint, especially like ultra endurance, that's something that really correlates over to like MMA. I need to, or like any type of fight or combat sport. And the only time I could truly feel that is when I do put myself in that position and you have to grind through, you know, those long enduring sets of runs and swimming and doing all these, you know, cycling forever. Man, cycling's fucking hard, bro. Like I fell twice already.
I know, right?
Yeah.
First time you do it, it's like, what the hell? I thought I was strong.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like the power is there, right? And that's where the strength training did come into play. But it's just like the coordination of it, right? I've never really, like riding a bike, yeah, everybody rides a bike, but there's a difference between riding a bike and cycling, right?
Yeah.
And then swimming, like I just know how not to drown. It's not like I know how to swim. And I found that out very, very soon. And so now I'm like trying to get all the details down. But what did you feel was like the biggest obstacle training for like triathlons?
It was that there's so much information out there that's built for somebody who's already comfortable. So I read, like most people do, the Triathlon Training Bible by Joe Friel. Good book, like really good book, rated highly. But I read it and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do now. Because it's like, it's already written for those people that know the basics of what they're doing. And I didn't even know how to breathe in the water. I didn't even know like why I should get clip-in shoes versus the cages. I couldn't run the length of a house. Like I couldn't do anything. And everything that was out there, all the training plans, all the coaches, all the magazines, everything was written for the person that I hopefully was going to be like 2 years later, but not for the person that I was. So that's why we started creating the content that we do, that is like, do you put on underwear under your cycling shorts? Like, do you change in between transition 1 and transition 2? How do you breathe in the water? And that was everything that I struggled with. And it's everything that like you struggled with and everyone else struggled with. I found that to be the biggest impediment. I mean, besides learning how to swim, learning how to bike, learning how to run, it was just like, where the hell do I start? And it took me years to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, so when did it start to like truly click for you? I know you did was the YouTube channel like right when you started doing triathlon training, or was that like years later?
No, I think that was probably like year 5,
Oh,
year
wow.
6 or so.
Okay.
It was about year 2 that things clicked. That year 1, I just totally like didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was like, well, I'll do a sprint, and then maybe I'll do an Olympic, and then maybe I'll try to do a sprint again. And like, no real plan or anything like that. I just figured I'd swim a bunch, run a bunch, and bike a bunch. The next year was kind of the same. And then the third year, in between years 2 and 3, I figured, all right, like let's actually start pushing myself and try to create some structure. And I just sort of figured out, all right, well, I did this today. Like I did, let's just make something up. Like I ran 10 times 30 seconds hard. All right, well, next week I'll try to run 10 times 30 seconds harder, or 35 seconds. And then went like, holy smokes, like this is really hard. Maybe I should take a rest day, and then kind of learned about rest days. And that was year 3. And that was kind of when everything clicked. And I also just committed to the sprint distance, as opposed to bouncing around to all these distances where the longer I went, the more variables there were. And I didn't know as I'd go up in distances, what was the thing that I screwed up. So I just started with sprint and said, like, if I can just get good at this and figure this out with fewer variables, then I can bridge up. And that was when everything started clicking. I went from doing a sprint race in somewhere like 1 hour, 23 minutes to, I think the very next year, 1 hour and 8 minutes. And like right away, it happened after I started learning how to put some structure to it.
Yeah. I think that, you know, just because of the fact that you're constantly progressing, like linear progressing, that's always going to be good in terms of your confidence, you know?
Yeah.
For me, like I went out there and I'm like, all right, listen, I'm a fairly good athlete. And I'm going to say I am a good athlete, but I'll just being modest. But man, I'm telling you, this is a tougher deal, because I've never really done endurance sports. Like if you look at it, like MMA is a mixed modal sport. Like, you know, there's aerobic, it's anaerobic, you know, so it's not fully just, all right, one speed all the way through, right? And triathlon's really not that either. But it is longer than what I'm usually doing, right? At the end of the day, for an MMA fight, you're fighting at the most 25 minutes, right?
And it's broken up.
And it's broken up.
I'm going to ask stupid questions. It's 5-minute rounds?
5-minute rounds, 3x5s primarily. If you're fighting like a championship fight, it's 5-minute rounds. So It's still not nowhere near the amount of time that you're doing a triathlon or any.
What's your heart rate during a round?
So the heart rate's going to be up in the threshold zone. So like it could be 172, it could be 175, and you need to be able to sustain that and sustain outputs in that range. Now, obviously, it depends on the conditioning of the fighter, but primarily, you got to also take into account the anxiety that goes into a fight. So they're stepping into the cage at probably around 135 to 140 beats per minute then and there. And like these guys, usually at the elite level, they have, you know, high max heart rates, they have high heart rate reserves, VO2 maxes are pretty high, but just the demands of the sport, right? Because you're doing like isometrics, and then you're breaking off, and then you got to be fast and explosive, and then you got to carry that through, and then be able to recover your heart rate in between a 1 minute, you know, break in between the rounds. So that's really where.
So where does it, like you say that endurance training helps, where is it? Is it in that recovery, or?
I would say it's definitely in a recovery, because if you can build up an aerobic capacity, and that's really the reason why the Diaz brothers are, you ever watch them, they're very methodical. They're not as explosive as a lot of guys. They keep that one pace, but that pace is sustained throughout the entire fight, and honestly they get stronger as the fight goes on, and so that's where the aerobic capacity, the aerobic power work does come into play. So they're able to recover a lot faster, their heart rate doesn't get as high, they're really monotone in a sense, where you got guys that are very explosive, somebody like, you know, like a Tyron Woodley, right, who's a very explosive guy. He's more anaerobic, fast twitch guy. he has to be very conscious of his energy outputs throughout the round because he can burn out really quickly. Same thing with me. I'm coming from a football background. It was 120% and then rest. 0 to 60
for like 7 seconds.
At the most, right? So I had to understand how to do that. I had to really work on my aerobic work. Like I had to really do like long slow distance running, tempo runs, all that stuff to get my body and my physiology ready for the demands, the mixed energy systems that are in MMA and in combat sports in general, boxing too as well. The only difference that you have there is that again those things are broken up, and it's similar to CrossFit in a sense when you're talking about mixed modes. But two things that I say that really correlates over is the mental toughness of the race and the fight, and then building a solid engine really, and that's and a lot of my guys like it, man. They rather do that than lift weights, believe it or not.
I wondered if that mental toughness. So I did a workout last week. We just finished filming 25 hours of guided kettlebell workouts for our app. And there are a couple of those workouts in there. They're 30-minute workouts. The couple that were like super conditioning focused, like do as many as you can in 20 minutes or do it as fast as you can. And the kettlebell athletes that were in the videos did it in 17 minutes. I'm like, holy geez, like I'm not a kettlebell athlete, but I did it in 15. And I wondered like, okay, why can I do this when I'm just new to kettlebells, and why did it take them 17? And just watching the videos, because they took a bunch of breaks. And when I got into pain, I was like, oh, this is just where I live. Like, this is cool. Like, it doesn't feel good, but you just kept going. And I wondered how much that translated over to something like a CrossFit or an MMA, like something that is explosive and more strength focused. But yeah, like you got to be tough SOB to get through it.
Yeah, I think that like these types of endurance sports, man, like watching like ultra marathons, and they got the ultra Ironman too, right?
Yeah, they got that. That's
crazy, bro. Like I'm down to do that. Honestly, I really do, and I probably will do it because I'm that type of person. and if I'm not getting punched or kicked in the face, I might as well just make myself hurt doing something. And I heard about
do it for you.
Yeah, I heard about the Scandinavia one, right? The one in
the Norseman,
the Norseman one, yeah. Well, I'm Viking, so I have to do that. It's
you'll be fine.
Second nature. You see that thing back there?
Yeah. I just noticed that.
I have to do that. That's one of the things. My wife thinks I'm crazy, and she says not to. She's used to me getting punched instead of like going into cold, freezing water, but it's gonna happen sooner or later. It's gonna happen. But I did want to talk to you.
If you like getting punched, that'll do it for you.
Yeah, right. So let's talk a little bit about your strength training, though. So you're doing kettlebells now. What's a basic week of training look like? We're talking endurance, triathlon training, and then also your kettlebell training too as well. What's it looking like right now?
So right now I'm not really training a whole lot for performance. I think the time of me getting to world championships and winning age group podiums and things like that kind of behind me. I'm a lot more interested in focusing on the business right now. So I'm more in the mode of like, how do I get a lot out of not a lot of hours? Cause the business is starting to grow. And, the training is a lot different than it used to be. When I was competing a lot more, I didn't really do a whole lot of strength. I'd do some strength, like a lot of hex bar work in the off season to build like a really, really strong foundation, and then try to translate that with some plyometrics closer to the season into high strength to weight ratio. So build a lot of strength with a hex bar, but not try to put on a lot of mass. So I did that with lifts. So I'd do lifts, but then drop the bar. Now it's very, very different because I'm focused more on overall health, overall wellness, overall performance. Like I want to be able to go out and run a 20-minute 5K time trial, but I'm probably not going to be able to run the 18-minute 5K time trial that I used to. But I can do that 20-minute 5K time trial like at the drop of a hat without problem. So I'm not going to be as fast, but I'm still going to be fast. So right now, a week is easy 30-minute swim on Monday and Friday. Then I like to put all of the intensity together. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are intense days. Intense bike on Tuesday and Thursday morning. An intense run Wednesday. And then the kettlebell work is intense on Tuesday afternoon, more mobility focused Thursday afternoon. And then on the weekend, I go longer, easy bike ride, longer, easy run. And that's about it. It's like maybe 8 to 9 hours thereabouts. Oh, and then there's another intense kettlebell day on Saturday, which is 30 minutes. So altogether, it's like 8 to 9 hours. And I could probably with that get pretty close to my fastest times, but there's no way that I'm going to be as fast as I used to be. I'll just be close enough. I'm giving up kind of that peak level of triathlon fitness for overall health.
Gotcha. Now you have Team Trainiac, right?
Yeah, it's been rebranded actually. So that's our app, and all of our business side of things we've rebranded into Motive.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. That sounds good.
Yeah, like a year ago, I realized that what we did, just because it kind of grew out of this YouTube channel that turned into a business, everything just looked like a hobby. Our URL, it was triathlontaren.com. Our app was Team Trainiac, like essentially Taren's most rabid followers. And that's hard to grow a business out of that when like the only business is like me. What happens if I get hit by a bus? What happens if I get sick and can't do triathlons? What happens if I get injured? But, and it's also just me pushing that business forward. Now, if I create a brand and that brand embodies what I believe in, like everyone can do a triathlon, whether you're an MMA fighter or an overweight mom or somebody who's afraid of the water, anyone can do an endurance sport. And that aspect of like taking on something that you're afraid of improves your life in more than just fitness. It improves your life because maybe you're going to start a business because you're a little bit more daring. Maybe you're going to have better time playing with your kids because you're not as tired. Like it just improves everything about life. And if we create a brand that's what it's all about, it doesn't matter if it's just me talking about that brand or the 300 ambassadors that we've now got with that brand or the contributors that we've got writing for our website. There are just more people that can hop on board with that message as opposed to hopping on board with me. So we just wanted to make it something that more people could be involved in. And like everything functionally with the business is still the same. We just put everything under this brand that is more about the message and the people as opposed to just me.
Let's backtrack a little bit because I did want to understand more so from the business side. Like how did you actually start like putting this all together, where you just like, I like triathlon, so let me just go ahead and start programming and stuff.
More so, I hated being an investment advisor. So when I started, I was an investment advisor and had all like the fancy letters behind my name, and I hated it. I wasn't any good at it. Even if I became the number one advisor in the office and like made $1 million a year and had all the fancy suits and corner office, like I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to swim, bike, and run and challenge myself and not wear a suit and wear jeans and shorts and like be active and not sit in a office with fluorescent lights over my head all day. So I started making these videos, and after a year, somebody locally ended up noticing that I was doing okay with these videos, offered me a position to take over his social media division in his company, which I then bought out a year later. And we did some consulting with social media on the side. We still had this triathlon thing that I was kind of just using as like R&D. Like I was still doing my triathlon Taren stuff while we were doing social media consulting. And then we tried something. I tried to do a daily vlog like 4.5 years ago, maybe somewhere thereabouts. And then it grew. Like it just started growing like crazy then. And at that point, then I was like, all right, well, we've got an opportunity to maybe turn this into a business. What can we sell? And I just started looking at what can we offer that's a little bit unique. So we started writing some books about those basic things of just getting started in endurance sports. And then we created an app that is meant for those people who are just getting started in endurance sports. And the podcast grew out of it. And I don't have big 5-10 year goals or like plans that I create. I've got like 3-month plans. Like what's a cool thing that I can create and make a little bit better over the next 3 months. And I just kept doing that over and over. And as of 2.5 years ago, this is all we did for a business.
Yeah. As far as like the systems that you use, right? So like, what's a day in the life of Taren?
It's a lot less busy than most people think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
you.
Most people are like, I know you're busy. Like, I'm really not.
At least you're honest, man.
Yeah. I try to have like a really good, honest 6 hours of work a day, 5 days a week. And that's about it. And it used to be like 3 hours a day. And now it's 6. I try to get my workouts done. Like a typical day, I'll wake up, just kind of mess around, do some Duolingo, catch up on some emails, sitting on the couch, just sort of catch up and put all the fires out on Slack. And then around mid-morning, like 9, I'll get my first workout in, which right now is anywhere from 30 to 75 minutes. Come back, and then work starts sort of before lunch up until 4 o'clock. And then maybe sometimes in the afternoon, I'll do that second workout. Basically when I start feeling sluggish and like I'm just kind of screwing around and going from one email account to the next email account to Slack to Instagram. When I start noticing that happening, then I'll go and do another workout. That's when I'll throw in the kettlebell workout and then catch up a little bit on like just reading stuff in the afternoon. So yeah, it's not as crazy as a lot of people think.
It's structured,
try to
though.
just be more effective.
Yeah. As long as you have structure, and like for me, it's like every day right now, just because of where I'm at, has to be to the T. Like 15-minute increments type stuff. But I mean, it's gonna get to a point where we'll have more time. Do you have any kids?
No kids. No. So that's one thing. When people are like, "Well, how do you find time for this?" I'm like, well, I'm kind of not one to give advice on that. Yeah. We don't have any kids.
And you do have that podcast too, and is that your wife, right? That's your wife that you have.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, she's the co-host there.
Yeah, man. She's the non-triathlon, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it?
Yeah, no triathlon,
No
Kim, which is
triathlon
good
Kim.
because like I get all geeky on science, and she's like,
Yeah.
"What the hell are you guys talking about?" Just that question alone, people are like, "Oh, I was wondering that too."
Yeah, taking it back. Hey, listen, if you guys don't know, check out his podcast. What's your podcast again?
Triathlon Taren Podcast.
Easy, see? There you go.
Yeah.
So, all right, so a couple of things, because I know you work a lot now with age groupers, right? That's what we call them, age groupers. I don't even, honestly, listen, I don't like the sound of that. I'm just saying.
I get that. I'd rather have a better name. I call sometimes adult amateurs. But even that, it's like, I think that's worse.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, in all actuality, Taren, when I go for something, like, I'm definitely pursuing to go pro. Like, I'm serious about it, right? And usually, I mean, I'll get there. It's not gonna be like 2 years, 3 years. It might be 10 years, honestly. But that's all right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal, to be a 2-sport pro, which would be cool,
Okay.
But for now, I'm an age grouper. So
For now.
that's it.
I'm gonna hold you to this.
Yeah, no,
This is on
definitely.
tape.
That's definitely for sure. I'll put it out there in the world. So for a normal age grouper, getting into the endurance world, let's say, triathlon, or like it doesn't matter. It could be a sprint, Olympic, could be an Ironman, whatever. What would you program a normal week of training? Let's say right when they start up their preparation for their first competition.
It's a lot simpler than people think. Starting with the swim, don't go to a master's program. Don't go to a triathlon swim club. Don't go to anything like that because people aren't even there yet. Like, you got to learn how to breathe. Whether it's our book or a coach or somebody like that, like, just focus on being comfortable in the water. And the more times you can do that throughout a week, the better. So if you're getting in the water like every day or 4 times a week, even just for 10 minutes, that's going to be better than going once a week for an hour. Like way, way, way better, because you got to build that muscle memory and the reflex to the second you put your face in the water, you're blowing out bubbles. And when you're blowing out bubbles and you're feeling like you're getting rid of all your oxygen, that's a good thing. Like, that's okay. That's not all right time to freak out. And that's how your brain is wired. So if you're just starting out, you're going to have a hell of a time in the water. And the way that you fix that is by frequency, short workouts, hop in a pool. Like, it can be a backyard pool. It can be a pool at like your condo. It doesn't have to be a lap pool. Just get in the water 10 minutes a day, maybe 4 times a week. That's going to build some comfort. That's probably going to be the biggest hurdle. And then the other things are pretty easy. The bike, 2 bikes a week, plenty. One where it's pretty easy, and every week you just go a little bit longer and a little bit longer. So start with doing whatever you can. If it's 10 minutes, that's cool. Build up by about 10% each week, and your endurance will come on pretty quickly. The other bike, make it intense, make it hard, make it challenging. 1-minute efforts, 30-second efforts, 2-minute efforts. Mix it in with some rest. Figure out what you can do, and then just build up a little bit more. And then the run, a lot of people, just about everyone, runs too hard, runs with a super high heart rate. Do run walks to keep your heart rate under. You can go on calculators and figure out what your zone 2 heart rate is. Run as much as you can at a super low heart rate. This is going to build that aerobic base, that ability to burn fat as fuel, that ability to keep your cortisol low, to recover from workouts. And if you can run at a low heart rate, your fitness journey in endurance sports is made. Like, that's the hardest thing that people have to learn. And it takes run walks. It takes running 3-4 times a week, again, for short periods of time, and then just gradually building up more and more. And that's like the basics of just getting started. But those are the few things that I'd work on. The breathing in the water, 2 workouts on the bike, 1 being long, 1 being intense, and running at a low intensity. And if you can, I would actually add in running at a low intensity 80% of the time, 1 of the workouts per week, about 20% of the time, fast, like really fast, like wind sprints to unlock that neurological speed, like the stuff that you deal with in MMA, like being twitchy fast. Most adult amateurs just aren't used to moving quickly. So like sprints across a football field, across a soccer field, to open up those neurological connections to fire quickly. You do that, within about 3 months, you're going to be ready to tackle just about any training plan that you can have thrown at you.
Gotcha. So to piggyback off of that, what do you think as far as in the weight room, like strength training wise, what should they focus on there?
Yeah, that's something that I like people always focusing on strength. If we add it in right away, some people might get overwhelmed with it. If you want to add it in, and or let's say people want to continue with it, the big thing to note is where you place your strength matters. So don't put your strength day that is intense on an otherwise easy day, because that's just going to turn an easy day that's supposed to be easy for a reason. It's supposed to be recovery focused, it's supposed to be easy. And then if you're like, well, it's my easy day, so I'll put in my strength, all of a sudden you don't even get an easy day. So pair it with the intense stuff. And then when you start getting into really specific training, like let's say you're doing your first race and you're planning, all right, I'm going to do a specific race training for 2 months. During that, pare back the intensity, make it just about muscle activation. So maybe you're having your weights or just doing body weight. You're really just hitting muscle groups, making them active, turning them on, as opposed to stressing them.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so you kind of do something similar to what I do, is consolidate stresses, especially like with the fighters. They'll have their high days, their low days, almost like a Charlie Francis approach where we basically do a high-low method.
Okay.
And that's definitely helped us from mitigating fatigue. I'm doing something similar now. And I run basically, are you familiar with conjugate training at all? Like West Side Conjugate?
No, it sounds
or
like
anything?
something that happens in prison.
Yeah, well, it might as well be. It's actually from, it's from a couple of guys that have been in prison probably. But West Side Barbell, Louis Simmons, was definitely one of my mentors. And I've basically taken a lot of the methodologies from the old Soviet texts, from Yuri Verkhoshansky and Louis himself, and condensed the conjugate method, because it's a 4-day-a-week strength training plan. But for my fighters and for myself, the amount of training outside of the weight room is very heavy. So we condensed it to 2 or 3 days at the most of strength training. And what you'll get is you'll get power and you'll get strength, and it's vertically integrated. Sorry about that. Vertically integrated, so it's more of a concurrent conjugated approach. So everything is being worked throughout the years, so there is no detraining of any type of system. And what we found was that the guys are always ready at all times. And for me, I'm allowing myself to at least maintain maximal strength, and at the very least some hypertrophy there. And I'm also gaining more elasticity because I'm doing a lot more plyometrics, and that's helping me with my run. And it's also, from a strength perspective, helped me with my power output on the bike. One thing that I do have to do is start to work in my upper body mobility, because in the water, I'm finding that very difficult to create rotation.
Yeah. What's do you guys have, MMA fighters have problems with T-spine rotation?
All the time. Yeah. Because.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Same, running isn't going to help that.
Yeah.
It'll make it worse.
Yeah. And like, I see the differences between, like, if you look at a swimmer as opposed to a cyclist and a runner, they're all like almost 3 different body types. Yeah. And I think I saw a video where you're like, what's the best body type or something like that? And
yeah.
And like, I'm like, well, damn, it's like a mold of all of them, because you have wide shoulders for swimmers, but you need to have narrow shoulders for cycling, right? Yeah. And my guys naturally are kyphotic in nature, right? Because they're always drawn in, they got their shoulders rolled forward. And so all that there, especially from a rotational standpoint, they're creating rotation a lot of times, unfortunately, from their lumbar spine. And that's an issue in itself. So if we can gain range of motion and swimming in general with my boxers and my MMA guys, it allows them to understand, how to create true rotation in that upper thoracic area, and it actually helps them with their punches. And it's also low impact. They're able to get some work in, and it's restorative in nature, because they're not pounding their body all the time. But do
you guys do much yoga at all?
I do a form of mobility training with functional range conditioning. So it's FRC, which is basically in-range control and isometric tensions in different base positions. So it allows you to get into positions that are appropriate or at least going to correlate over, and then also just giving you active in-range control. So first we got to get flexibility, and then we get mobility, and then we can stabilize that range when we have that particular ability to do so, right? So I'm really working on, we do things called pails and rails, which is progressive and regressive angular isometrics. And all that is a basic ramp up. So I'm going to put tension on a particular motion or like a position, and I'm going to press into an immovable object, whether it be the floor or some type of rack or wall or something like that. And what it's doing is it's down regulating any nociception. It's integrating more of that isometric tension to allow for more range to occur. So I'm activating mechanoreceptors, and I'm getting the body comfortable being in that position. So again, they're like, okay, well, your body's like, I'm strong there, now I can move in there. So a lot of times, if you don't have that range, from a mobility standpoint, the body's going to shut it down. It's going to tell you it's not ready to be in that position, because you cause further injury there. Yeah. But if we can get strong in that position, then your body's like, okay, I can let that go. Now you can have more free range.
Yeah, and you guys need to be strong at your end of range, whereas I am just focused on getting to an end of range and not necessarily being strong there. Like if I can be functionally strong, which is kind of the functional word is kind of strange, but like if I can be strong, if I can bear weight, if I can move in different ranges of motion, and I have more range of motion, I'm considering myself successful. But in your case, you need to be in a range of motion and be strong at that end of range of motion. Yeah, so that'd be different.
Yeah, you got external
yoga
forces.
Doesn't really do that.
No, yoga does a really good job at understanding how to balance and having kinesthetic awareness. And that's definitely a positive when you're talking about fighting, combat sports, and any athletic sporting event, right? But for us, it's like, all right, now when you have external forces put upon you, you need to be able to have an ability to defend and slow down that position, right? And if you're too flexible, if you're too elastic, I guess you would say, or your joints have that too much range of motion, that could cause an injury, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line between good and bad there. But, you know, with the swimming, I found that it's allowing me to feel those positions and in dynamic fashion, but I don't have gravity pulling me down and having to resist, you know, that pulling motion. So now I'm free floating, and I'm actually being able to move more efficiently in ranges that I need to. So I mean, it's definitely difficult, but I could see the carryover.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. Yeah, I ask about yoga because we're just starting to incorporate yoga into our plan, not because it has any like tangible performance benefit, but I don't want a whole bunch of athletes that when they're 55 and done with endurance sports that they can't scratch their back or they can't tie their shoes because they just pounded themselves into the ground. And running is like, it's like pouring quick dry cement into your bones a little bit every day. And we want to have like one day of 30 minutes, like straight yoga, probably a little bit more floor based than you would think of yoga to be, but then every day having a 10-minute meditation in our app that it's not really like lying meditation, just sitting and breathing. It's like getting into a pose and you got to sit there and breathe into the pose. And yeah, the kinesthetic awareness of like, how do you breathe into your ribs? Well, we're going to sit in child's pose for 10 minutes and you're going to learn how to breathe into your ribs. And it's meditative, but it's also, it does have a benefit. And yeah, I just wondered if that was something that would be beneficial in MMA, but it doesn't have that strength component.
I would also
that
say
elastic component.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a big thing right there. And you don't want to lose that elasticity because then you can't
which
retwitch
you do when you get too bendy. Like back when friends who were super into yoga a couple of years ago would be like, you should do yoga. I'm like, I don't want to do yoga because that if anything, it shows that it doesn't help your run performance. And that's when I was like all about performance.
That's interesting. It's like, because, you know, I do believe in the right circumstances, yoga and meditation more so is going to give you a benefit from a recovery standpoint. Restorative wise, I like it. From a performance increase, when you're talking about like physical progressions, not so much. But that's another thing I did want to ask you. When it comes down to either the people that you're working with or yourself, what are some ways that you manage fatigue? And also, what are some ways that you're monitoring fatigue at the moment?
Yeah, the managed fatigue, I really like those bookend days of Monday and Friday being so easy that what we have written out in workouts is like, you should feel guilty about how easy this workout was today or how little you did today. Having that Monday and Friday before a weekend, after a weekend, bookending the intense stuff Tuesday to Thursday, I really like that. Making sure that the training balance of the amount of time that you spend in high heart rates is no more than 20 to 30% of your total annual training time. That's a huge, huge one. Polarized training or pyramidal training, whichever one you do, way, way better than sweet spot training or threshold training for endurance sports because you can just accumulate so much time at threshold that your body is sitting, bathing in lactic acid and cortisol your entire life. And all of a sudden that's not good for your hormones. It's not good for your fat metabolism. It's just so bad for everything. So heart rate is a big one. And then if people really want to step it up, HRV is something that we use, whether it's a Whoop strap or HRV for training on your iPhone or an Oura ring. I've tried them all. They're all good. The one kind of gripe that I have about all those things is that most of those HRV for training is better. Whoop and Oura kind of upset me because they make the data so complicated that how the hell do you make a decision day to day? So what we actually do with HRV data is we ask our athletes if they want to start using HRV data, just strip out the HRV measurement and put that into a spreadsheet where we give them the spreadsheet and it calculates their 7-day rolling average versus their 30-day rolling average. And if the 7-day average dips under your 30-day rolling average, you need some rest. And that's a really good indication. And my problem with Whoop and Aura is that they just give you so many data points and they're like, well, today you're great, but tomorrow you're awful. And then the day before you were great. And then tomorrow you're awful. Like, how do you create a training plan around that?
Yeah.
Because it's so day to day. It's tough to actually predict what's going to happen. So with that rolling average, you can actually start seeing like 4 days ahead of time. Oh, I'm not feeling kind of good. Maybe sleep a little bit extra and pull it back in line. So it gives you, in my opinion, more actionable data.
Have you ever tried Omega Wave?
No. What's up?
I'll send you over a link to that. But basically, it's the same concept. It's an HRV monitor, but it also measures out direct current. So you'll get to see exactly like not only your autonomic nervous system, but your central nervous system fatigue too as well. So that does give us a good indication. And then it does give us what exactly we could train. So it gives you like, all right, you can go for long slow distance running, or you can do some type of weight training, or you just need to just sleep and relax. So it does give you those gauges there. And it's more of like an objective approach to managing fatigue. But for me, primarily, a lot of the times, being with my athletes a lot and knowing my body too as well, if I'm training, a lot of it's subjective. I'll go off an RPE standpoint and see how my body feels. If I'm waking up tired, if it's hard for me to go to sleep type stuff, and my grip strength too as well. That's another thing. That's another key indicator. But
see, that's good for you because you're an athlete that's been doing it a long time. We, with our athletes and with our app, what we're actually I feel like I just keep plugging the app, but it's also like I'm not really plugging it. It's just the basis of how I think about training. While I like HRV, it requires somebody to have that $200 whatever or a membership to Whoop, and the 5-question subjective wellness scale. I love that. And when you actually look at studies comparing HRV to 5-question subjective wellness, the outcomes are almost the same. So we're actually going to probably build into our app, every time somebody opens the app first thing in the morning, they just have to take 5 seconds. Like, I'm a 4 out of 10 in this. I'm a 5 out of 10 or 5 out of 5. I think it's 1 to 5, and use that as the 7-day versus 28-day and base their training off of that. Because with our new athletes who aren't yet familiar with like monitoring how their sleep is, what's their grip strength, is tired actually tired, they don't yet know those feelings because they haven't come from a background of like being a pro athlete like you. If we start training them into that and just answering the subjective wellness questionnaire, I think they can learn how to do that stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good way. It's a good way of putting it, because like at the moment I work with some guys that aren't obviously pro or elite athletes, and you ask them what RPE is, and they have no fucking clue. And so with that,
I was the same. When I first started working with a coach, every day he's like, "How are you?" 7 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, I was like a 2.
Yeah, exactly. No, I hear you. Well, all right. Well, before we go, I want you to go ahead and plug anything else that you have, and also tell them where they can find you at, your Instagram, the YouTube channel, and the podcasts. Floor is yours.
Oh, I think I've successfully weaved everything in here. Yeah, we got books, we got a podcast, we got a YouTube channel, an app. Everything that you can find is either Triathlon Taren or mymotive.com, MOTTIV.com. That's where you can find the books. You can find me, you can find our podcast, you can find our app all through there. And there aren't a lot of Tarens out there, so you're not going to find another Triathlon Taren online.
All right, guys. So thanks so much, Taren. Hold on one second. And I will see you guys next time. Episode number 56, Daru Strong Podcast. Catch you next time.